Canadians need help, not homicide, but that's not what many chronically ill, poor, homeless, and mentally struggling people are getting. They're getting told to end their lives for expediency, efficiency, and convenience.
Minors from 14 to 7 years of age, nearly 18, the committee recommends, and the Board of Directors supports as well, that these minors could, with their tutors or parental parent, could make a request for MAID based on the level of persistent and intolerable suffering that they may experience and become unmanageable and senseless. The same for babies from 0 to 1 years of age who are born with severe deformations, very grave and severe syndromes, medical syndromes, whose life expectancy and level of suffering are such that it would make sense to ensure that they do not suffer, given that their possibility of surviving is basically nil.
Physician-assisted suicide has received a rebrand. To shirk the stigma, it's now called MAID, Medical Assistance in Dying. It seems a little less sinister when you put it that way, less like doctor-induced homicide and more like, just a helping hand. But it might be more accurate in some respects since it's easier than ever to take your own life with the help of the publicly funded, completely rationed Canadian healthcare system. A nurse or a pharmacist can help a patient and their life now. If you agree with me that Canadians need proper care, not prompt dispatching at the hands of some overly eager medical professional, please visit helpnothomicide.com and sign the petition. Now, medical homicide in Canada is happening for all manner of reasons and not just because someone is facing imminent death due to a painful terminal illness. A 51-year-old woman in Ontario with severe sensitivities to chemicals took her own life with the help of the medical system because she couldn't get better housing. In Toronto, a 90-year-old woman chose a medically assisted way out because she couldn't face any more time in government-caused COVID lockdowns in her retirement facility. A 66-year-old Montreal man chose medically assisted death because he couldn't quickly access home care that he needed to deal with his other medical needs. A 54-year-old Vancouver woman plagued with debts because of her chronic medical conditions told Chatelaine that a medically assisted death might be her only option. This young woman wants to choose medical assistance in death due to chronic illness, diabetes, and bulimia. She wants to leave behind a fiancé and her young son. And then, a Veterans Affairs caseworker allegedly admitted to helping Canadian veterans end their lives.
The veteran, as a result of that this is all about, came to me directly and gave me 2 recordings that were said on Wednesday to not exist. And they are in my possession, and they're on my phone. That caseworker did not inform him of services. That caseworker not only offered MAID, it was unprompted, and it was pushed after 2 no's. You'd think 2 no's would do it. It did not. I have here the transcript, which of course I cannot get a hold of the veteran because he was so distraught he left the country. Pardon me. So I will refer to the transcripts, which I made personally, to answer any and all of your questions.
These people need help, not homicide. They need better health care, better home care, better options, and compassion. They need to know that their worst day should not be their last day. But these are the adults. I think the snowball has picked up speed and is nearly at the bottom of the slippery slope they tell me doesn't exist. Doctors are advocating for infanticide on so-called compassionate grounds. Babies are born alive and then actively killed by doctors and other healthcare professionals because their little lives have been deemed not worth living.
Infanticide is the killing of an infant soon after birth. Louis Roy of the Quebec College of Physicians recommended legalizing infanticide in certain cases to a parliamentary committee. No, I brought this issue up in the House of Commons, but other parties were more offended that I brought it up than they were about the original testimony. Take a look at this exchange.
I'm a little outraged that we're using time in this House talking about access to suicide, using terms like killing children. This is outrageous speech. I'm extremely shocked.
I wish the member was more offended by the realities on the ground in this country than he is by the fact that I've raised those issues in the House.
Disability should not be a death sentence. This is the end stage of Rome. Societies that convince the public it's okay to kill the most vulnerable amongst us because of their inconvenience, they do not last because they should not last. And it's going to get much worse. In 2021, MAID deaths accounted for 3.3% of all deaths in Canada. For context, 16,000 people died of or with COVID that year, while nearly 10,000 asked for in writing and received MAID. And that number is up 32.4% from the year prior. And that number does not include those who made a verbal ask and then received MAID. And as Amanda Ackman writes, medical associations are now considering playing fast and loose with the numbers by considering not putting MAID as an official cause of death on death certificates, but rather putting the reason for MAID as the cause of death. And now the Liberals have removed the 10-day waiting period between when someone asks for medical assistance in dying and when they can ultimately receive it. There's no longer a moment for sober second thought anymore. And as of March 2023, mental illness will now be included in the criteria for assessing medical assistance in dying. It can be accessed by people whose natural death is not in the foreseeable future. You simply must be in a state of decline, according to you, that cannot be reversed in ways that you find acceptable. Fatality or terminality of a condition is no longer a requirement. True North journalist Andrew Lawton describes rawly his suicide attempt 12 years ago. He acknowledges that if MAID were around then, he would not be around now, living the life that he is. Being poor or sick or depressed should not be a death sentence. It should be a reason the community reaches out to help, to lift up, not to harm, and ultimately exterminate. Now, if you agree with me that medical assistance in dying is not a cure for poverty and despair and should not be a euphemism for infanticide, please sign the petition to the Health Minister, Jean-Yves Duclos, at helpnothomicide.com. For Rebel News, I'm Sheila Gunn Reid. A society that exterminates the most vulnerable, the sick, and the sad is not a society that will be around for very long. If you agree with me, sign our petition to the Health Minister at helpnothomicide.com.